Hello everyone, and welcome to what I'm hoping will be a quick video of what my top 5 favorite games of 2025 were. I'm going to start off with, a pick that probably everyone's expecting to see at some point and rip the band-aid off. My number 5 pick of the year is Expedition 33. This game has very dynamic gameplay, which I'll go over in a clip in a couple of seconds. Very beautiful environments and very creative storytelling. To me, as an RPG, it reminds me a bit more of the Tales series in terms of like how the structure is than a Final Fantasy. But it probably tries to take more inspiration from Final Fantasy as opposed to Tales. But I really enjoyed the gameplay. The music is pretty nice. The environments are beautiful. I was not that big a fan of the story and characters. I'm not gonna go into any spoilers, but all I can say is like the big event that happens at the end of Act 1, I was really not a big fan of that. The story just felt like it kind of fell down from there and just didn't recover. But the gameplay still progressively gets better. Gameplay loop, I should say, still progressively gets better from there. So, I'm just gonna go over a bit of why I like the gameplay and mechanics. So when it comes to Expedition 33, there are two main things I really like about it. One is the environments. I'm trying to avoid spoilers in going through this, but as you can see, this is like the second area or second dungeon of the game that you explore, and it's just really like creative and beautiful. You're underwater without being underwater. You see all like the whales. I think that's a blue whale, or maybe it's a humpback whale. It looks more like a humpback now that I think about it. You got that fish that all the animals in the world don't want to eat, the sunfish, and it's just really pretty. So that's like one of the two key factors of this game that I really enjoyed. The other, if I can find an enemy, because I'm kind of doing this live, is the combat. The combat is the real appeal to Expedition 33. Okay, there we go, perfect. This isn't the kind of enemy I'd really like to fight to show off the gameplay, especially since I'm kind of far in the game and I'm gonna kill it easily. But for enemies, one of the features that you have that I really enjoy about this game is the aim feature. So you get this pretty early on in the game, and depending on where you aim on an enemy, it has an effect in battle sometimes. So like if this was a certain other enemy, I could shoot it like right here in the face, except it would be something called a core normally, and you do extra damage. But right now I'm so far ahead in the game that I'm one-shotting things. Normally you're not supposed to one-shot with a gun or the aim feature. It's not always a gun like in this character. Okay, here's a better enemy to show this off to without getting into the spoils. So for the aim feature, you can aim right at this mine, for example. Like, not all enemies are like this. You hit this mine, the mine explodes, and it's gonna hit the other enemy. It might kill them in one hit again. Okay, it only killed this guy. So, they're done, and then you have this like bar at the bottom. Because of my stats, like it's recovering right now, but the blue bar, like, tells you is essentially like your mana or MP or whatever you want to call it, and then you get all these different attacks and stuff like that. I forgot. Yeah, don't worry about. Yeah, I was just thinking I might have had a spoiler in one of my skills there, so don't pay too much attention to that. But you have all these kinds of skills. What I'm gonna do is show you like some of the defensive features that you have right now.
A storm is coming.
Since I'm pretty fast, these enemies are too slow to keep up with me. Okay, so on defense, you have two things you can do, or you have a couple things you can do. It shows you right there. You can jump, which you wouldn't use here. Yeah, these things are too slow to show off everything. But I really like the defensive mechanics because it makes it so you don't have to spend a lot on like, HP and stuff like that. You can just try and like do things like this you know, dodge attacks like that. This thing is really slow.
The elements dance.
Time to hit big.
Yeah. So now this time the other thing you can do is you can parry. And if you parry, you get a counter, and you do that. So there's all kinds of defensive mechanics and offensive mechanics about the game that make the battle and combat dynamic. And then, like I said, you got the environments that all look really nice and stuff like that. So all in all, like, those are the things that contributed. Like, I don't know if I should say what kind of whale that is, you know, but you know, those are the things that made me really enjoy this game. And you know, I'm sorry to say I didn't really like the story that much. The music's also really nice. But anyway, that's why Expedition 33 is my number 5 game of the year. So my 4th favorite game of the year is Metroid Prime 4. Beyond, I don't have the ability to record Switch or Switch 2 gameplay, otherwise I'd try and show some stuff off. I put this game at number 4 over Expedition 33 because I enjoyed the combat, I guess, a bit more in Metroid Prime 4. Like, I did 100% the game. You know, I have to say, like, Metroid Prime 4 is a game, I understand why it's controversial. Like, the flaws with the game are really bad. Like, when you'd have to go back to try and get, like, new beams and stuff like that, like, I would just get up and make myself, like, a drink or get some water. Because of how long the loading time is, and the desert's boring because collecting green crystals is a pain, and you know, even if you're doing it for the whole game, you still don't collect enough. You know, I don't know what Nintendo was thinking, you know, when it came to like some of the decisions when it comes to like what you do in the desert, because like people will say like, oh, Breath of the Wild is like empty or whatever. Breath of the Wild is nowhere near as problematic when it comes to the world map as compared to Metroid Prime 4. Like, there's nothing in the desert to do other than travel to locations and occasionally do like a shrine, and you know, there's just so much more they could have done with it. But the core gameplay is just so much fun. You know, I liked all the new abilities that they gave you. I understand people like the joke, it's like, oh, you get psychic, you know, whatever, but you know, I really like the gameplay. The music is pretty decent. You know, if I had other thoughts to kind of give, like the story, I don't really care for it. You know, if you were to ask me to compare the story of Metroid Prime 4 to Expedition 33, I'd say Expedition 33, even if it disappointed me story-wise, like is obviously still better than this, but I just really like the exploration, I like the combat, I like the environments. There's one specific part of the game in Metroid Prime 4 I want to talk about that was my favorite part of the game, which is when you're in the ice space just like exploring and like finding out about what the Grievers are and things like that. Like, without getting into spoilers, like the way that part of the game is like so atmospheric is, in my opinion, like the best of any Metroid Prime game. Like, exploring that laboratory, like going near the Grievers and hearing like the music change because of the psychic waves from them or whatever, like it was just really good. And you know, there are things like that I just really enjoyed, and the boss fights, I probably said this already, was really fun. So that's why Metroid Prime 4 is number 4 for me. So for my number 3 game of the year, all I'm gonna say is, if you know, you know. And we're gonna move on to number 2, which is so Uma Masume, as we all know it's called, is my second favorite game of the year. I spent a lot of time playing this game this year. But the things I like about it is just like the gameplay loop and the replayability is pretty fun. You know, watching the races, like this game honestly really surprised me. Like, I thought it was just gonna be like some cutesy moe, like mobile gotcha game and all that kind of stuff. But it was honestly a lot of fun, like training the horses, or Uma Musume, if you know, you want to be more specific, is really fun. You know, I like the gameplay mechanics and all that kind of stuff. You know, you don't have to really spend like any money on this game. Like, they've been giving out a lot of free gems, but I will say, like, because they're doing the banners so fast, I guess, to try and catch up to Japan, you know, I can understand, like, if you're somebody who wants to collect like every horse or something like that, like, you're gonna run out of money. But they've been pretty generous, all things considered. And it, you know, I'm not really like the biggest gacha game person, but this game honestly was just like really fun to play. You know, as far as the individual like stories go, you know, they're kind of cute, they're kind of funny. You know, I don't really have any complaints about them. If you were to ask me which character is my favorite, you know, I put Goldship for two reasons. One is because she does the piece for number two, and two, because she's really funny. You know, but it's a pretty enjoyable game. It's pretty simple and easy to get into. And, you know, I spent a lot of time playing it because, you know, I have my phone with me all the time. So it was a really fun game. And then obviously we're going to go on to the number one game, which shouldn't be a surprise at this point, which is Look Outside. Yeah, so Look Outside is my favorite game of the year. I honestly really love this game. Like the graphics, you know, because I really like sprite work, is beautiful. The music perfectly fits the atmosphere of the game. The story and like gameplay loop of this game is just like, everything about it is so well thought out and like put together, and it just makes the game so much fun. Story wise, I don't want to get into spoilers. There isn't so much like an overarching story in this game as there is, you know, just like this mystery and how you choose to go about like solving it, you know, what you want to know, and how the game rewards you and punishes you for trying to figure all that stuff out. And I don't want to go into too much without, you know, spoiling anything. It is a horror game, so it does get pretty gory at times, you know, but to get a bit more into the gameplay without spoiling stuff. Yeah, so Look Outside's an RPG Maker game, so it does get it kind of buggy at times, you know, but at the same time, the game's like $10. Usually sometimes it's worth even less than that on sale. You know, but the general idea is you're in an apartment, you know, bad stuff is going on, as you can see by this trail of blood and the occasional, dead person. But, you know, you have your items. This is your main character, Sam. Just to say, this is on a cursed mode file. I removed other party members because I just wanted to show off like Sam's the main character. You know, you can name Sam whatever you want, and Sam's kind of designed to be the player's avatar in the game and all that kind of fun stuff. But essentially, you know, you're able to go into different apartments and kind of explore, you know, and it's very like, you know, I said Earthbound earlier, but to me, this game honestly reminds me more of like Mother, because I feel like the enemies in Mother, when compared to like Earthbound and Mother 3, come off a bit like more, maybe like mature-ish and like intimidating, for lack of a better word. Like there's something about how those NES graphics are like detailed that just makes them come across that way, and that feeling is kind of transferred over into this game, if you ask me. You know, but you're able to just kind of walk around the apartment and all that kind of stuff, and you have to deal with all these kinds of monsters and things like that. The combat is pretty simple. You know, there's nothing super special about it. It's just standard RPG combat. Like, I'm pretty sure I could get into battle here to give you an idea. This thing might kill me because the game itself is pretty difficult. Now we'll just go with this. But you have skills. You know, enemies have like weaknesses and resistances and can do, you know, a lot of damage. They have special effects, and the animations will kind of change when you're fighting them and things like that. I'm actually, since this is the hardest difficulty, I'm actually kind of surprised this thing's alive right now after that. Okay, I died. But normally you try and get more and more of a party, and you can have 4 party members at a time. You know, but that's just kind of like what I love about this game. It's pretty difficult. You know, the gameplay is really fun. Whoops, accidentally clicked continue because I'm trying not to spoil things. But, you know, the game has like over 10 endings, I think, as of 2.0. And just like what you need to do to like unlock each and every one of those endings, because I'm pretty sure there's an achievement for all of them. Like, it's just really creative, and it adds to the whole experience that just makes this game so good, and that's why it's my favorite game of the year. So that's gonna do it for this time. Thanks for your time, everyone. I recommend you try most of these games. There's a certain one on this list that's definitely not for everyone, but like I said, if you know, you know. And that's gonna do it for this time. So thanks for your time. I hope you had a great 2025, and I'm looking forward to 2026.